Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is video number 3. So in video number 1, we created our API using Google Sheets. So we have our data for our portfolio in Google Sheets. In video 2, we kind of set up our workflow. We got our code pushed up to GitHub. Um, so that's all wonderful and good. So now let's actually start sketching out our a basic portfolio site. Not gonna do anything too fancy. Again, the goal here is just to kind of walk you through. So I'm gonna leave it to you to sort of to see what you really want to add to it and how fancy you want to get with it. We're just gonna do something really basic. So first off, let's just we're gonna be using ShoeLace, and since ShoeLace is loaded, let's examine ShoeLace and see what tools we have. This is actually the first time I use ShoeLace too, so you're gonna be learning with me. Now, ShoeLace is a web component library, meaning that technically using ShoeLace, we just have to use these components. But the cool thing is that unlike Bootstrap or Materialize, where you have to use like CSS classes and interject a little bit more code, here you're just using pretty much what looks like HTML tags. So let me see if they have something for like navigation or title. Let's see here. Tag, tab panel, switch, responsive embed, rating, radio, input, icon library, drop down, drawer, details, color picker, card. We'll probably use the card thing a little bit later. Button. Okay, we'll use the buttons as well a little bit later. Details. What's this? Oh, that's kind of neat. Okay. We'll maybe try that out later too. Okay, I'm not really seeing much for titling. We'll actually see there's more. Utility components, animation, format bytes, theme, typography. Oh, let's take a look here. Typography. The default font stack is designed to be simple and highly available to many devices. Font size, font weight. Okay, these are just CSS classes. Okay, so let's just get the basics sketched out with this. Okay, so I always like to do this first. There should be 3 sections on our body, and just so that way it semantically makes sense, we should have a header, the top of our page, the main area, that's going to be where all our main content's going to be, and then a footer. That's going to be the bottom of the page. If we might not have a footer, but the idea is that we have it sketched out so that way there would be. Okay, this will just make life a little bit easier for us to look through the code. And to make it even easier, let's do something like this. Header. Try to do the comment here. Header area. There we go. And then I'll just actually just copy this. Control C. Main area. Again, just makes it easier to read through this stuff when you put in these comment headings. Same thing in your JavaScript, same thing in your CSS. Comments are your friend. Okay. Cool. So first let's just create like the title. So the title is going to be, you know, Alex Merced's portfolio. So I'll just do a straight H1. Alex Merced's portfolio. Okay, and let's see if we see that. So let's go back. Let me open this up with live server again. So, because I didn't do that since the last video. There we go. See, that doesn't look super pretty. Let me just close this other one. And what I'm going to want to do is let's start the styling with the title. Okay, so what I'm going to do is head over to Google Fonts, fonts.google.com. And I usually just want to pick out 2 fonts real quick, so I'm not going to get too fancy. We'll use this for titles, Poppins. So I'm going to just find a really bold one. Yeah, that works for me. Okay. So that adds it over here. Now I'm going to go back and find one for just our general text. This works for me. So I'll select that. Okay, so now I got these 2 fonts connected. I'm going to want to load this in my CSS style sheet. So I'm going to click the import. And I'm going to copy not the style tags, just the import part. Copy that. Go back to our code. Go back to our CSS, styles.css, and just copy this here at the top. That way those fonts are available to me. Okay, and what I like to do is have a lot of variables. CSS variables make life a lot easier. So what you want to do is you want to create this selector, root. Root is really just a place to save variables. It doesn't really do much of anything else. Okay, and the way you define a variable is you just create the variable. Always has to have 2 dashes first. So 2 dashes title font. I'll just call this title font. And then you put the value of it afterwards. And then we'll have main font. And then you put there. Okay. So I'm going to go back over here because it shows you when we look over here, you can also see here's the specifics on how to specify them. So we want this to equal this. Actually, really, we want it to equal this whole value here. So let's copy that. Did I choose the right one? No, that's the one I want for the main font. So let's Control C, let's put that right over here. There we go. Let me go copy the other one. Poppins. Poppins should be our title font. So I'll put that there. Cool. Okay. And then I always want to make sure that all my headings have the same font. So H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Okay. So they're all going to have font, family, and then I'm going to use a variable, so var, and the variable I'm going to use is title. So going forward, if I use this title in other areas, all I have to do is change it here. I can change it here and it'll change it throughout my entire CSS. So that's the nice thing about using variables. They make it where if you want to change your color scheme, etc. So like I'll just do a quick color scheme. So we'll say, you know, primary color. So I'll usually just do a variable called primary, and this will just be navy blue. Okay, let's try navy blue. I like navy blue better. Does that work? I think it's just navy actually. Yep, it's just navy. Okay, and then our secondary color, primary, we'll call it secondary color, will be crimson. There we go. Okay, it's not going to be the prettiest thing in the world, but just to kind of show you, I can just change these afterwards, and it'll change to whatever. Okay, which makes it really easy to do multiple color schemes. So you can just, with your JavaScript, change the value of the different variables, and you've just changed from like light mode to dark mode. Font family. Okay, and we're going to say that all of these have a color. We're going to say color var primary. Okay. So now when I look at the page, see, it's now we got the nice font. Okay, and it's in navy blue. So I'm going to want to center that. Actually, now let me think about this. Here's what I'm going to do. We're going to actually put the logo in the nav bar because it's always a cool look. So we'll just wrap this in a nav and put the H1 in the nav. Okay. And then I'm going to have a separate div for the menu. So we'll have a separate div. Yeah. We'll have a separate div with a class or an ID of menu. Okay, and we'll put all our menu items in there. You'll see why I do this in a moment. Because what we're going to do is I'm actually going to make, let's think about this. Let's make that nav a flexbox. Okay, I want to make sure just that nav. So here we're going to start doing stylings that are more specific to my header. So what I'm going to do is do this header. And then I'm going to make that a comment. So this way I know that these styles going forward, see, these are more like global generic styles that I have in my whole thing. And actually one other thing I like to always add is I use this. This means everything. This styles everything. It's the all selector. And I want to make everything have a margin of 0 by default. It's kind of like a mini reset. Padding of 0. and a border size, or was it box sizing? Box sizing border box. What that does is that like the size of things includes margin, padding, border. So when you add a border, it doesn't add to the width; it's included in the width. Just makes it where it's easier like to predict sizes of things. Cool. Now let's see here. Padding root. H1, H2, 3. Okay, so what I want to do is take the header tag and I want to style specifically the nav that's inside of it. I'm doing this just in case I use nav somewhere else. Like maybe I use a nav in the footer. I'm not going to style the nav footer. I just want to style the nav inside the header. So in this case, what I want to do is I want to make it a Flexbox. So display flex. Okay. I don't want it to take up the whole width. So we'll say width 90%. Problem is, if I do width 90%, okay, we won't see this quite yet. Actually, let me give it a background color so you can see this. So we'll say color var primary. Oh, not color. Background color. Background color. So that's, we're going to set it to that blue because it's our primary color. So you see like this bar is not like centered and it seems like all pasted up to like the top of the screen. I don't like that. We need to fix a couple of those things. So what we want to do is we need to use margin to fix that. I want it not touching the top of the screen. So I'm going to give it like 20 pixels of margin top to bottom. But left and right, I want it auto. That'll automatically center it. And there we go. Okay, that's nice. Now, what I want is that H1 inside the header nav to have a different color. We'll say color white. Okay. Okay, so see that, like, that's cool, but see, this is still a little crunched up. So I want to do some padding. So we're gonna go back over here and add some padding. And I want to add like 10 pixels of padding just to make it so that looks a bit better. Alex Merced's portfolio. And the cool thing is, what I'm going to do is with Flexbox, is right now there's two elements in here. There's essentially, so if I open up the inspector, so I right click, hit inspect, and I go to elements, like if I go in here, I'll see like here's the H1, but then there's also, you don't see it right now because there's nothing inside of it, but also that div, that menu div's here, and they're stacked in a row. But I can use Flexbox's properties to sit there and say, hey, I want this block here, and I want the other block on the opposite side. So that way the menu is on the opposite side of the navigation. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use justify content, and I want space between, because that'll push both of them to the ends. Cool. And just to test that out, I'm going to put just some text here. Okay. And then I just want to make sure that that also has a color of white. So header, nav, and then the ID div, the ID menu. I want that to have a color white as well. The text in there, I want to be white. And you see, like it pushed this all the way to this side, because space between, what it does, it makes sure that it puts all the space between the elements equally. And since there's only two elements, it pushes them all the way to the sides. So then I'm going to put all my menu items in this div over here, which will create the nice little menu over here on this side. Very cool. So now all I got to do is start building out my menu. I'm just going to put a few things in here. And I'm going to use kind of a weird thing to do, but just so that way we don't have so many different classes, I'm going to use an article tag. Okay, and then in these article tags, I'm going to wrap them with an A tag, so that way they're all clickable. Just put the closing A tag over here. And then I'm going to say href equals, we'll come back to what these equal. The first one's going to be like our GitHub. Yeah, actually, I'll just leave it at that. GitHub And then theoretically there would be Twitter. So we'll say GitHub, Twitter, LinkedIn. Those are my links. Okay, but see, like it's stacking them on top of each other because that's a div, and that div is still a normal block type div that's going to stack things on top of each other, like boxes on top of boxes. I want that to be a Flexbox too, so I need to style that menu div. So let's go back to styles. I do have a style for it already. It says header nav menu, so I'm going to change that to a display flex. Okay, and then I also want to give some space for everything in there, so padding, like we'll say 5 pixels. So it's not super claustrophobic. And I want to make sure that text is not that color, because the color it is now, the default link colors, they make it kind of hard to see. Okay, I can't really see them right now. See, now they're all side by side, but they're kind of hard to see. Okay, so what I need to do is I'm going to do menu header. So in the header, there's a nav tag, and in the nav tag, there's going to be a div tag, and in that div tag, there's going to be an a tag. And what I want to do is say that the color of that is going to be white. That should change it. Yep. So that changed them, but they're still kind of small. We'll address that somewhere else. Cool. Actually, we can kind of address that here. Let's see here. Font color. Let's do font size. Say larger. Let's see, does that do what I want it to do? Yeah, they're getting a little bit bigger. Good. I want to get rid of that underline. So let's do text decoration, none. That is better, but I want some space in between them. So we're going to put some margin. That should be inside the menu. So we're going to put some margin there to spread out the different article tags in there. So we'll do like 5 pixels of margin in there. Did I do that right? Margin 5 pixels. Doesn't seem to do much. Let me think about this. Header, nav, menu. Oh no, I want this around each article. So let's make a style for the article tags. Header, nav, div, a article. I just like doing the full thing because that way it's gonna. There's another way to do this using BEM, a block element modifier, to name classes, which helps you avoid collisions. Me personally, I have a tendency of trying to avoid using classes if I don't have to. So I'll write it out like this, so that way it's nice and specific, and I know that's going to override stuff that applies to something else. Because again, in CSS, when there's 2 styles that apply to the same thing, the more specific selector always wins. Okay, header, nav, div, a article. And I want here to be their margin, 5 pixels. So that way all those links are. And then also I want the text to be uppercase. We're going to do a text transform. We're going to make it all uppercase, so that way it looks a little bit more menu-y. Yeah, that looks better. And there you go. They're clicked. I think that's good enough. Okay. So we have a menu for navigation. That's pretty cool. Okay. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to open this up in responsively so we can start seeing how it looks like on other platforms. Responsively is a cool browser you can download. I highly recommend installing it responsively. And allows you to kind of see like what you're designing in different things. So I have it set up so that way when I type in responsively into my terminal, it'll open it up. You install it, you have to kind of figure out how you're going to set it up. Okay, so I'm going to copy the URL into the browser. And there we go. So that's right now how that looks like. Looks fine on an iPad. Okay, on mobile, we're going to have to do something about that. Okay, we'll cross that bridge. Okay, and then so here you can see it on other devices. Okay. Ideally we would probably end up creating like a sandwich menu. Basically what would basically what would happen is that these three would not show, that div would just disappear on a smaller screen, and we replace it with a sandwich, and then the sandwich would make it reappear. We'll play around with it down the road. Okay, I'm gonna keep this real simple. So we have our navigation, and then essentially what's gonna happen is that in our main area, so I'm gonna go back to our HTML. I'm just gonna have another H1 or an H2 that says my projects, and then below that there's gonna be a section tag, because that's section, main, footer, nav, article. They're just divs. At the end of the day, they're just divs with semantic names. So I'm using this because I want to just try not to use the same one over again to make it easier to do my CSS. So my projects, let me save this so it makes it all nice and pretty. There we go. And then here's where we're going to put in our projects, but we're going to use jQuery to do that. Okay. My projects, let me think about this. Let's just take a look at how that looks like on the screen right now. So I want to get that centered, so let's center that. So now we're going to go into my main styles. Main styles. Okay. And we're going to say main H1 equals main H1. That's going to have a style of just like text align center. That's fine. That's all I need right now. And actually that's an H2, so that should be H2. Oh, actually I want to look at it in here. So there we go, my projects. And cool, I think that's going to be it for now. So we got one thing I actually want to do before we're done. Let's git and commit this. So let's do a git add to update this. Git commit add. Git commit -m added navigation. And then let's do a git push. Git push origin master. You always want to get in the habit of this. And now I'm going to go look at my GitHub, just make sure that it updated. Okay, so I can see that, see added navigation. I can see that commit take place. Now I'm up to 3 commits. But let's actually get this online so we can actually see it live on the internet. So for that, you're going to want to head over to, I did already save this URL, so that's fine. Head over to netlify.com. And if you don't already have a page with website, or actually, no, we'll use GitHub Pages. Okay, we'll use GitHub Pages. You could use Netlify, but let's use GitHub Pages. Okay, the way this is going to work is you go to Settings, and then you're going to scroll all the way down. Now, before you've done this, before you have to have created a repo called your username. So, like, let me just find mine. IO. Said coder dot, there we go. So you're gonna have to have a repo that looks like this. Alex Merced, your username slash the name of the repos, your username .github.io. That just triggers the feature, that turns the feature on. Okay, so you don't actually, that doesn't have to be your portfolio repo. That just has to be a repo that exists. And then in that repo, you go in there and you have to turn on GitHub Pages. So you'll find the section called GitHub Pages somewhere in settings. So here, GitHub Pages, and you turn it on. And now you'll be able to make pages that use this URL. So every repo will become part of that website. So now if I go to the one we're just working on, mock portfolio, and then I go to settings, and I scroll down to GitHub Pages. So I'm gonna say, yep, let's do GitHub Pages. Let's do it from master branch. Let's save. Okay. So now what that's gonna do is that that's gonna serve that. And now if I go down here and I click on this, well, it's not gonna happen right away. It takes a little bit for it to actually get going, but it should be ready by the time we get to the next video. Okay, but now technically your site's deployed. Okay, let me just have that open. Github.com mock portfolio. Okay, and then let's try this one more time. See if it's gotten ready yet. Let me hold shift, refresh. Maybe it just needs to, yeah, it's gonna take a second. Okay, but I'll see you guys in the next video where we're gonna actually start on the JavaScript side of things. We're gonna build a web component that'll be the card that we will put our projects into. So I'll see you guys there.